Jonathan Kuminga has been a name linked to the Chicago Bulls multiple times this offseason, and honestly, there's only one scenario where it might even make sense for the Chicago Bulls to go out there and trade for a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. I'm going to talk about that scenario as it was brought up by Sports Illustrated and Bleacher Report on today's episode of the Chicago Bulls Breeze, and it starts right now. Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Chicago Bulls Breeze. Let's start things off right. Drop a C-Red in the comments below if you are C-Red Nation, and hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. Let's jump into this topic because I do think that this is an interesting one here for the Chicago Bulls where, listen, when you start to look at the Jonathan Kuminga trade, I said this on Locked On Bulls multiple times, it just doesn't make sense for the team to go out there and trade for somebody who's a ball stopper, very much like Jonathan Kuminga is, unless he's going to become the focal point of your offense, right? It doesn't make sense to bring a guy like Kaminga over with Josh Giddey, with Coby White, where you need this immense amount of ball movement to make both of these guys valuable. You need the three-point shooting. You need the guys that can go out there and knock down the shot. And I get it, right? The Warriors have been trying to move them, even though they acquired Jimmy Butler, it still feels like they're one piece away. And Jonathan Kuminga has never fit with this team. And I want people to understand this. This is not a Jonathan Kuminga slander video. I think that he absolutely raised his value with some of the strong playoff performances that we saw from him. And I think that entering restricted free agency, he's an interesting name here, but he kind of gets screwed over in a sense where, you know, if he signs outright, he's not going to get the money that he's looking for versus if he does a sign and trade. And that's where I think this deal could be interesting if the Chicago Bulls were interested in actually moving on from a very, very important piece. I saw this from Bleacher Report's Grant Hughes, said the Bulls received Jonathan Kuminga in a sign and trade situation. The Warriors would receive Coby White. Now, to make this work, I'll explain that later on in the video. There's some other things that would have to go into it because of where the Bulls are cap space wise, and not trying to go into that second apron there. But where this is sitting right now, essentially what you're doing is if you're the Bulls, you're trying to reshape your roster around Josh Giddey and give him a scoring piece that is going to be able to build off of what you saw from Josh Giddey last season. But what you're giving up there is a beautiful post All-Star performance by Coby White that I think it's very tough to overlook and just look at the playoff performances by Jonathan Kuminga and say, yeah, you got to go all in on a guy like this. Now, again, I think that when you're talking about a player who had to step up in the moment and gave the Warriors everything that he had to try and go out there and win after Stephen Curry went down with the injury. Over the playoffs, you saw Kaminga average 19.5 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist on 62.5% shooting and 50% shooting from the three-point line. So giving you that stretch big kind of player, I guess, if you want to say he's a big, like he's kind of more of a 3 in my mind, or maybe a small 4, but giving you that stretch ability versus what Coby White did post All-Star break. You're talking about 28 points per game, 4.5 rebounds, 4.1 assists over 18 games, shot 51% from the field, 40% from the three-point line, 89% from the free throw line, and on top of all of that, he was player of the month and gave you some really good moments. But I think where you start to kind of look around at the team and say, okay, well, how does this play out? How does this help the Bulls? Is what Kaminga was doing was in the playoffs. What Coby White was doing was in the regular season. And you didn't see that same impact, and you haven't seen that same impact from the Chicago Bulls in 3 of the 4 play-in games that they have been in from Coby White. You just haven't. There's the one game versus Atlanta where he absolutely balled out of his mind, and the Bulls dominated, or didn't dominate. It was a close game, but he balls out of his mind. He helps you get a big play-in win there, and then you get to that next round versus Miami, and Coby White yet again is nowhere to be found. And so I do have some concerns around Coby White with the playoff numbers. But what I do think is, are you ready to break up what you saw in the second half of that season in that backcourt? I know it was only an 18-game sample size, but are you ready to move on from that and try and go into this era where Josh Giddey is the focal point of your team? He's probably the number one on your team, and you're moving on from Coby White and adding in Jonathan Kuminga, who, listen, if you're going to make that deal, again, you're probably giving up more assets than that. I would assume you're probably going to have to give up some sort of draft capital as well, and/or you're probably going to end up having to give up, a different player. I think there's a couple of options here, right? So one where I could see it happening if the trade were to go through, because for the Bulls to make this work, you have to make Coby White's salary match, which you could sign him to an extension. But right now, where he's at right now, there's not enough to match a $20 million salary, which is probably what Kaminga would be looking to get in a sign and trade situation. So the Bulls would have to add in that additional salary to make up for what is it, 125% plus 250,000 that you can match in a trade there. So for you to be able to do that, you're talking about Coby White and probably Dalen Terry, or Javon Carter would work as well, but is anybody wanting Javon Carter? But you're probably talking about moving on from a couple of pieces, low money pieces that add into this deal to make that kind of trade work, which is fine, right? You're adding back Jonathan Kuminga. You could also do a situation where you get a third team involved, where the Bulls get Kaminga. Maybe the Warriors don't want Coby White. Maybe they're like, we got enough guards. We're fine with the guard position. We got Jimmy Butler. We got freaking Buddy Hield. We got Stephen Curry. We're good at guard. We're not adding. Pajemski's on this team as well. We're not adding more guards to this team. And so you get a third team involved to try and make this deal work, where you're adding in a veteran shooter to the Warriors, and some draft capital or something like that, right? Or they get the big man that they're looking for. I guess Vooch could be a part of this, but I don't even know if they want Vooch anymore with some of what we saw from Quentin Post in the playoffs. If you're betting on upside right now, which essentially the Warriors and the Bulls would be doing. But what I do think about this deal is that if you were to make this deal, right, you're now going into this situation where you've got Josh Giddey, you've got Coby White, and you're trying to make that, you've got Josh Giddey, you've got Jonathan Kuminga, and you're trying to make that now the focal point that you're building around with this team, which is fine, right? But is Jonathan Kuminga coming in here to be your number one option? Is he coming in here to be your number two option? Is he coming in here to be your number three option? Because the part that a lot of people are going to forget in all of this is Matas Buzelis had a really nice rookie season. I would think your goal is to continue to build on that situation without having to go out there and drop the bag on some of these players. Let me know how you guys feel in the comments below. Do you think that Jonathan Kuminga could fit with this team? Would you do a Coby White for Jonathan Kuminga trade in some sort of fashion to try and make this all to try and bring, let's be real, a number one scorer to this team? Because if you trade for Jonathan Kuminga, that's really what you're trying to do here. You're trying to bring in a number one scorer that you think has star upside, because you don't feel like you have star upside on your team. And listen, I love Coby White. I do think that Coby White is more of just a scorer that can be the scorer on the team. I think he's grown as a leader throughout the season. I think he's grown as a player throughout the season, but I do think he's mostly a scorer. And when you take that into account, what Coby does is replaceable. Heck, if you give Jonathan Kuminga more shots throughout the season, can Jonathan Kuminga be a 25 to 28 per game player with how he scores? Possibly. Now he's got to continue to have the 3-point percentage be a heck of a lot higher, very similar to where it was at in that 50 to 40% range. I don't know if he's going to shoot 50% over a season, but in that 40% range, you would have to feel good about him there. But if you were being honest about, the impact that Coby White has, it is scoring the basketball. It is getting to the rim. It is being a 3-point threat that can give you some of that dual threat ability outside and inside. That is replaceable. But is Jonathan Kuminga the right piece to replace it with? And I think that's where this conversation gets incredibly difficult. What does adding Kaminga to this team do to Josh Giddey? I've mentioned Jonathan Kuminga is a ball stopper type of player. That ball is going to go in his hands. He's going to set himself up. He may get to the bucket. He may finish strong. He may be a bucket. But what is that looking like for you as far as how the rotation of the offense is going to look now? How is the offense going to flow? How is the team going to move? How is the team going to be defensively this season? And I will say this, when you're talking about Kaminga, adding him to the team. The one thing that you can't take away from, especially just looking at those playoff numbers, I do think that Jonathan Kuminga adds more to this team defensively. Now, am I going to sit here and tell you he's an elite defender? No, I'm not saying that, but he improved himself defensively, especially with the minutes that he was getting. When you look at his defensive box plus minus, he was a +4 in the playoffs, which is a significant jump from where he was the playoff season before. He was a -1. He was a +0.04, I should say. His defensive win shares jumped up dramatically from a 1.2 to a 2.5. That's a solid size jump for a guy who is not viewed as a defender. I think the biggest stat, though, when you look at opponent field goal percentage, when he was the primary defender on the floor, Kaminga held his opponents to 5.8% below their season average this season. And he added some lateral quickness. He added some switchability where he can get from 2s to 4s. Like, he did improve himself defensively, especially in that playoffs. And so you kind of look at that and say, okay, would that be an upgrade over Coby White on the defensive side of the ball? And are you getting a real two-way player? That is something that would be valuable to the Chicago Bulls in the long run. If you're getting a two-way player, I think that is something that could be very helpful to this team. And so I'm not completely out. I will say this is the only way that this deal makes any sense, is to actually add a piece in Jonathan Kuminga and take away a piece like Coby White, where you say, Kuminga, you are getting all of these shots. This is your time to shine. This is your time to go out there and ball out. But do I think that the Bulls are going to look to do that? That's the part that I don't know. That's the part that I do look at and I say, I don't know how it. I don't see the Bulls seeing what they saw in the second half of last season and moving on from that when we ran back the Zach LaVine situation 3 years in a row. But maybe AK has learned from this entire thing, and he's saying, hey, this is an opportunity for us to go in, get a young piece that is on the rise, that is still incredibly young. It allows you to get younger. I believe Jonathan Kuminga, if I'm not mistaken, would fall in just about right age-wise with Josh Giddey. I believe they're both around the same age. And so, you could kind of see that dynamic of having the young tandem being the same age work together. But Coby White's 25. It's not like Coby White is over the hill and it's all done, right? Like, so this is one of those things where, and I'm going to finish it with this. Would you rather bet on Kaminga's upside or stick with Coby's proven production that you saw down the stretch? Both of them are a question mark. Both of them. And the Coby White question mark, you haven't even seen his in the playoffs. Jonathan Kuminga at least was able to put up 30 in a playoff game and give you some solid defense. You haven't even seen Coby's potential in the playoffs. The closest we've seen is the play-in. And like I said, he didn't show up for the show 3 out of the 4 times you were in there. And you got to have some real conversation on the possibility of paying Coby White moving forward. So I think that if you were to make this trade, it truly is the sign that you really believe in Josh Giddey. You're all in on Josh Giddey. You're trying to build around Giddey, Modest, and Kaminga, and you're hoping to add a really nice role-playing piece, high echelon role-playing piece to this team in the draft. Like, I think that would be an interesting deal for the Chicago Bulls to go out there and make. And I think it's a lot of change for them to make. Now, if you're asking me, gun to my head, would I make this deal? Is this a move you would make? I would probably say no to this deal, because I believe with the current draft that you have right now, you can find Jonathan Kuminga. As crazy as it is to say, I think that you can go out there and you can find Jonathan Kuminga. Coby White's scoring now becomes an accent piece for you, right? Where with Kaminga, I think that he's got enough cachet, and if he comes in, the ball's going to stop moving. You're not going to have as nearly a good a rotation versus a rookie who can come in, who can give you 15 to 19 points a game, who can give you that pop-off game, who can give you that, and as he develops and different things like that. I just think those pieces are available to you in this draft, and you can get them in here and say, hey, this is how you fit in with this system. Jonathan Kuminga doesn't currently fit in with what the Chicago Bulls are trying to do. He just doesn't. And listen, you also have to say this as well. Maybe what the Chicago Bulls are trying to do doesn't make sense, and you need to change the course and you need to focus on Jonathan Kuminga. I'm here for that conversation as well, but I just feel like if you cannot give up assets, if you can hold on to Coby White, who is still on a very team-friendly deal, he's making about $12 million a year, if you can still hold on to a piece like that, and be able to get maybe a little bit more of a hometown discount, bringing Coby White back here and keeping him a part of this team as you're continuing to build. I think that that's the better situation than going all in on Jonathan Kuminga, who, while I don't think he's going to be making crazy money, right, I think that he's probably making Patrick Williams money. Unfortunately, on this team, you currently have a Patrick Williams. So I think that you have to weigh all the options and look at how it affects the pieces that you currently feel good about. How does it affect Modest? How does it affect Giddey? If I'm moving the ball around, it gets to Kaminga's hands and he's going one-on-one. So we'll see how this all plays out. I don't think that Jonathan Kuminga will be a Bull by the end of the offseason, but maybe he will. And if he is, I think the Bulls just have to pivot kind of the direction they're going. I don't think it's the end of the world, and I think it could be something that works. It just changes things a little bit for this team moving forward. But hey, man, I appreciate you guys for tuning in and showing love. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a 5-star review. Y'all know what to do. We're getting back on it. We're getting back on it. I know it's been 24 days since I posted a video over. Actually, it hasn't been that long because we did do the live. So it's only been about 6 days, 7 days, something like that, since I last posted a video on here. But one that I actually sat down, pre-recorded, all of that stuff. It's been about 20. Let's see. Oh, see, this ended. Oh, I did this 4 days ago. No, I couldn't have. Let's see. Live. Yeah, I don't know what the heck that is. So May 12th. It's been a while is what I'm saying. We're getting it right. We're getting back to it. My fault on that. Your boy's kind of busy, but we got some changes coming in place that are going to help us with this. So we're going to get back on our content. Probably going to be trying to post daily on here. So stay tuned in with us. Hit that like button, subscribe to the page, man. Y'all stay safe out there, Chicago. See Red Nation. Stand up. Peace.